Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Shero Spotlight. I'm really excited to have such a special guest today. This is a person that I met in Nashville when she came here to record, and she recorded with my husband, Bill Warner. And when I met her, she was one of these people that I wished she lived close because I just felt like we really connected. So I'm really excited to have her on the show today. And I want to tell you a little bit about her before we get started. She's a singer, songwriter, a writer, and a community advocate. And she tells the story of Western North Dakota. That sounds romantic and exciting right there to me. She's an Americana musician with heartfelt, honest lyrics, and she's been singing and talking about the buttes and creeks of her family's working cattle ranch since releasing her first original album at the age of 16. So since then, she's gone on to tour nationally and she's recorded 5 more albums. The latest is Playing Favorites. We're going to talk about that. It was released in August. And she's got this nationally acclaimed song called Boomtown, and it's a folk ballad about life for people in the Bakken, which I'm going to have her tell us what the Bakken is. And that's been featured on all kinds of programs, national and international documentaries. And it's really put her on the front line of telling about her community and where she lives in the oil community at large. So since 1910, that would make her really old. She's not that old. Since 2010, that's hilarious. She and her husband, Chad, have worked alongside her dad as the 4th generation stewards of the Veeder Ranch, where she chronicles life on the land as a weekly columnist for statewide newspapers. And also she has this really cool blog called Meanwhile Back at the Ranch. And she's got a book out called Coming Home that she released in 2017. It's a compilation of her favorite photos, poems, stories, and recipes. And she's a founding member of McKenzie County's Long X Arts Foundation. And she just told me that the Long X is a trail. And she works there at this foundation to help create and promote cultural and arts-based activities in her hometown, blending her love and connection to the arts with her drive to make her rural community a better place to work and live. So a really busy lady, and she has 2 adorable daughters to boot that are carrying on the tradition. And please welcome to the show, Jessie Veeder Scofield. So glad to see you here.
Hello, Kirsti. It's great to see you.
I know, it's great to see you. And we've always talked about coming there to visit and do something with Songwriter Girl, and someday we will. And I'm just really excited to have you here because I think you're one of the most interesting people I've ever met. And I got to tell you that I really think your song Work Girl needs to be the theme song for Duluth Trading Company, because every time I have some of their clothes and every time I see that ad, I think, oh, they need Work Girl.
I love that. My husband is just wearing a pair of their overalls today going to work. So I'll call them.
That's funny. Well, I love that song. And I'd never met anybody who was working on a ranch before. And I have cousins that, worked at dairy farms, but that's really different than what your family does. But I wanted to ask you first, what really first inspired you to start writing songs and start writing, pieces for your blog and for newspapers?
Yeah, so I started writing when I was a little kid, really. And one of my memories about that is actually in the basement of the little house on the ranch where my dad grew up. Dad was going through, my dad's a musician and rancher as well. So he's a folk musician. He played coffee shops and toured around in the 70s. But he was going through his old albums and things with me. And I was probably like 9 years old.
Okay.
And he pulled out just a blank book, like a journal that was his maybe. And it was all blank. And he said, I noticed you've been writing little poems and things, and maybe you should just keep this book of all of your writings. And I just remember looking at that blank book and thinking of all of the possibilities, like all the stories I could tell. But I was raised, so that was really exciting for me that I had this from him and the permission to just do it. But also was raised on this folk music that Dad was listening to, like Harry Chapin was a big influence of mine when I was just little, listening to his records, listening to him sing Lyle Lovett tunes and songs that really told a story and captured the essence of a community and the people in it. And I look back on it now, I didn't know I was falling in love with that type of music, but I was in love with it. There was a song, Waltz and Fool. You probably know it, Lyle Lovett song about this
Yeah.
kind of like, this kind of guy that, you always see at the bar, and he's kind of the town, maybe he's a town drunk. I don't know, just like this character. And I fell in love with Waltz and Fool. I wanted to write music that told the story of a place. And then I just happened to be raised in this place that had this rich and interesting history, kind of like you said, a romantic history out here in the Badlands of Western North Dakota. So I wanted to write from the beginning. And then of course, started writing music when I was really young, and playing with my dad when I was really young. And then we were going to record a little album of songs that we like, cover songs that we did together. And I had been writing my own music, and he heard it and said, let's just go to this local studio down the road in this small town. There's a Christian rock artist who set up a studio in his attic, and I recorded 7 songs of my own on my first album. And it just kind of carried on from that. No matter what I would do, I came back to the writing part of it. So long story short, every artist has that kind of where they started and how they got here. I always thought, you live in Western North Dakota, people say you have to get out of here, right? In the community that I was raised in the 90s, it was a dying community. And so we were just told, go to school, go to the big town. But I love this place. This place inspired me. And I just kept kind of looking back over my shoulder. And my husband and I went to high school with my husband, decided that we wanted to figure out how to make our life here. And of course, technology really made that possible. So when we got married, now we're married like 14 years.
Oh, congrats.
We were so young. I can't believe it. But I just started writing about what I saw. And we asked about the blog. I had been on the road. I toured up and down the Midwest as everyone did back then, before YouTube was really a thing, like singing for your supper, like I see these young artists. I was in my Chevy Lumina driving up and down the Midwest. I learned to drive in my dad's feed pickup without a stoplight in sight. And here I was like, in toll booths and traffic and like totally out of my element, but always singing and talking about Western North Dakota.
Yeah.
And so that was the niche that I found, and the niche I continued to kind of develop as I came back to the ranch and started my blog and started kind of talking about what I was seeing and how it felt to be back home on a place that raised me. So
it's so beautiful. What's so beautiful on your album that you recorded in Nashville, Northern Lights, I love that record. It just, it's so, I mean, it just takes you somewhere. And I love when music takes you somewhere and it makes you feel,
me too. And that just makes me so happy to hear you say that.
Oh, I love it. And the Work Girl song, I tell you, we got to figure out a way to get that to Duluth Trading Company, because they need that song. They need that song, especially when they have the ads with the girls, and their long, no yank tanks and all that.
Yeah. You need quality. I mean, I have a friend that makes those types of clothes too out in Montana. She's Red Ant's Pants. And
that's a cool name.
Yeah. Because what is it? The female in the ant colony, they do all the work. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I know, right? So out here on the ranch, when you're a woman, and the men work hard too, I'm not saying that, but you just have like that extra level we do inside of us that we want to care for things. Yeah. And then like me, I want to get in there. I want to know what's going on. So yeah, you need
it's so great. So what is your process of songwriting or of writing? How do you start writing? It sounds like you kind of stream your ideas in a way.
I do. I think that's exactly right. But I think it's probably not any different than most artists. Like it comes at me in different ways. Always though, it seems like the inspiration comes from quiet, solitude, but also momentum, and the walking and the driving and the like moving forward seems to channel some of those ideas for me. Yeah. So I usually start with a concept or just like a phrase or whatever, and it kind of goes from there. And sometimes it's easier than others. And like everyone else that's a musician, writer, creator, there's a million stacks of finished songs and ideas and things I'm going to get to. But I really, really thrive on the process of creating a project. And then and then I love getting out, obviously in the world and sharing it. But then I always want to be on to the next thing, on to the next creative
Yeah.
project. So
Yeah. That's funny you would say that. I can see a lot of times, like you'll hear about movie actors and they'll do a movie and they'll say, well, I never watch I never watch it. And I used to think that's ridiculous. Of course, we want to see the movie. They've worked on it for 10 months or whatever it is. And sometimes I think it's like that about songs. You write a song and you get it done and then it's like, okay, next one, please, because you've worked on it for so long. And I love what you just said about the process, and one of your inspirations is the momentum of something, and I think that's really interesting. And like you hear about people get ideas when they're driving, and I've never heard anybody put that way. That's really, really good.
Yeah, I think, there's on Northern Lights album I worked with you all on, was written in a time of really just some serious strife in my family. My dad was dying in the hospital. He's recovered since, but it was middle of the winter. January, North Dakota is just awful. Like it's cold and it's, bitter. It has its own beauty, but when you're in the midst of wondering if someone that you love is going to make it,
Yeah.
it was the most desperate time in our family's life. But I remember driving, I was sitting in the back seat. I think my family was maybe driving away from the hospital. Maybe we were coming back to the ranch. And up here, when it's quiet and still and dark, you can see the northern lights. And I remember just pushing my head against the glass of the window and thinking, like, there's my hope. He's going to be okay. We're going to live to see it. He's going to live to see another winter here. He's going to live to be an old man. And that's kind of where that song came from, exactly in that moment of momentum.
That's so
pushing
cool.
through, seeing the other side of things, which
Oh,
I think, music can be such a healing thing. It has been for me. So
Yeah.
is this landscape in hard times like that. I look to the land here, and nature really is a healing thing for me. And that momentum, that moving, that getting your heart beating, that cold, fresh air in your lungs can really heal anything for me. And it certainly has.
That's so beautiful. And you're so fortunate because you live and work and get to explore and know such a beautiful part of the United States. And, so many of us are living in cities and, on a quarter acre and that kind of thing. And you're out there in the middle of all this stuff that, is so much bigger than us. And I think,
isn't that the truth? Like, I think, these were Native American lands before we were here, and we have
right.
teepee rings on the hills. I think sometimes my memories and where I dig, they're so much bigger than me. They're beyond me. I think I say this in some of my work, like the memories out here are not my own. They're stories passed along. And I feel like, everyone's home has a certain magic to it. I think whether it, good memories, bad memories, this home, this connection to place, we all have it. I've just had it just pull back. And so I'm so thankful that now there's technology. I live in a time where I can live here, raise my family here in the literal middle of nowhere, and have a music career and a writing career, and have those things. Because I wasn't really ready I didn't want to give that up. I wanted to be here and do this. And I figured out a way to do it. So.
Well, I just, when I met you and heard everything you did, I just thought it was the coolest thing that you could do that. I mean, because so many people don't, it's not a thing for everybody to have to do. I mean, I think it's really cool that you carved this out where you were at in a place that you really loved in a way that inspires you. So we're talking about your dad, Gene, who is such a great man. And I was so glad we got to meet him too. And I'm glad he's better. And talk a little bit about this beautiful tribute you paid to your dad on your latest album, Playing Favorites. And what are some of the highlights of recording that album?
Thank you for asking about this. This Playing Favorites has been a trip because recording an album in 2020 anyway. But then also in the middle of it, I was diagnosed with a crazy cancer that was taking over my airway 90%. So I was recording this album that was sort of, it's all kind of come full circle, but I had been playing National Cowboy Poetry Gathering, kind of digging into the old songs that raised me and the musicians that raised me. Had some great musicians around me out here in the middle of nowhere that really inspired me and really influenced me. And so I thought, boy, I'm getting into my 30s. I have these little girls. I have all these songs, like Guy Clark songs I grew up on, Emmylou Harris. Like, I want them to always have this, my girls, the next, and my nieces and my nephew, to have my dad's voice, to have these guys, my friend Mike's dobro in there. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to capture the essence of what I was surrounded with growing up and being influenced as a musician. So it just kind of is a passion project and kind of a personal project, but also noticed that when I went out into the world singing, some of these songs like I'll Fly Away, May the Circle Be Unbroken, Red River Valley, everyone would sing, you know, like I could get people in the room and sing together like the old days, like in church or in, you know, those barn dances where people sing together. We don't really do that.
That is so funny you say that, because I was having a conversation with my girlfriends from high school. And my one girlfriend said, you know, we were talking about the difference between youth today and us. And she said, we used to sing together. And I really think that's so true about singing. You know, when people 100 years ago, heck, 70, 60, 50 years ago, when they would have strife or something, they'd sing. They'd sing in groups, they'd sing at church, they'd sing in school. And I think that is so true. I'm so glad you said that, because I think we should encourage more people to sing together.
Well, and I heard, well, there's nothing like it when you're a performer. And, you know, if you can get a room full of people, even if it's like 20 people, 100 people, they all know the song and they're connected in that moment. And we've done this in a barn dance in a small town, you know, out in the middle of North Dakota, and they're singing along it. And it's like, oh, we have something here, or this is the purpose of this. This is the purpose of being a creative soul, that you would connect people in this way. And that's been such a powerful thing to me. I've always wanted to perform and sing my own songs. I've been really, really lucky that I've gotten to do that. But now taking these songs that are, some of them aren't so familiar. There's a Neil Young song on there, you know, that I always loved. But that people recognize and they ask us to sing when we go places, they remember it. So that was kind of the idea behind Playing Favorites. We went to a local studio that I had recorded in before, brought local musicians in, and it was just like working through it. And, but yeah, then in the middle of it all, I was having trouble breathing. This was a year ago, pretty much today.
Wow.
And, then found out, you know, right in the middle of the project that I had recorded the entire thing. This is just crazy. With a giant tumor lodged right above my 2 lungs. So one of my lungs was completely blocked by the tumor, and the other one was like 80% blocked. So then it was like, okay, well, everything was put on pause. I was rushed to Mayo Clinic, take the tumor out of my airway, go this summer and do a giant surgery where they cut me wide open and took the rest of it out of the other side of my airway. So it sort of put things in perspective, but then it coming full circle was like, I was thinking about like my dad's mortality, these guys who are in their 60s and 70s, the songs living on. I wasn't thinking about my own mortality at all, but this kind of idea that we would live on for our children in this music really hit home then when I was sort of facing this really dire health situation. And you really, when you have young kids at home, it was a powerful, crazy thing that we're on the other side of now. But the album came out pretty much exactly on my 37th birthday when I was told I was cancer free. So
that's so great.
Yeah. So there you go.
What a great story. It's so beautiful. And the songs were probably, you didn't know what was going on inside your body, but you were so inspired by the songs. I've watched the video and listened to the songs, and I think you sound fantastic. So
can you believe I could sing? I mean, I couldn't talk very well. I couldn't catch my breath, but I could dig deep, and I was singing and performing throughout that. And they were worried I was, you know, you never know when you go in, if you cut a, vocal cord or what kind of damage, but I'm back at it and yelling at the kids. Just fine.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, really. They have to hear me. They don't listen to me anyway. But
that's hilarious. They're so cute. Well, speaking of the kids, so you're a mom with 2 young daughters, and their names are Rosie, and your other daughter's Edith.
Yeah,
Edith,
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 and we
Edie.
call her Edie. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
named after my grandma, my dad's dad. So
that's so cute, so cute. One of my friends in school was named Edie, and I always loved that name. But what are you think? What do you think is one of the most important things you're teaching them, or that you want to teach them?
I love that question. So I'm going to be really honest here. My husband and I had a long journey in trying to have children. We were married really young. We were high school sweethearts. I grew up with him. 10 years of infertility, like 6 miscarriages. It was really rough to try to make that transition into having children of our own, or perhaps adoption. We were going down that line too. But also in the back of my mind, sometimes as a musician, and as a woman, a performer, it takes a lot out of you. I was traveling a lot, and I wondered if maybe having kids was going to take that creative energy and that passion out of me. I didn't ever see really anyone else in my life personally that had the type of job I had, where they were also a mom. So when you're watching like celebrities, or like, these women that are on TV singing professionally or being actresses, at my time growing up, they didn't really talk about like, also they were a mom, and also they can do this. I just didn't think those two worlds were going to work for me. So I was wanting to start a family, nervous about how my career and my creativity would be affected. Of course, when you have the baby, everything's crazy. Everything turns upside down. We had 10 years of just being married and doing whatever we wanted.
Yeah,
So that was, I had a little postpartum depression to deal with, and you're isolated. It was all of this. Okay. But now they're getting a little bit older. I'm sort of settling into this. I've been a mom now for 5 years. And the most important thing for me is to show them that you can be all of these things, right? Like, you can be a mom, you can pursue your passion at the same time. And I should have known, now looking back, because my parents did that for me. I think that's why I am who I am, because my dad worked his ass off, and my mom did too, but also did things that they loved. My dad always played music. At the end of the night, he picked up his guitar. There was a part of him that was beyond fatherhood, and a part of my mom, who's a dancer and a creative person too, that was beyond motherhood, that I got to see her in the house. She would always do these, like, I can't do them, but when she'd bend over into, like, maybe into a drawer, she'd like lift her leg up like arabesque, because she's a ballet dancer. So she was
oh,
always sort of
cute.
like moving through the world as this ballerina. So my mom was my mom, but she was a ballerina. She was kind of a social worker. I got to see that. So anyway, the most important thing for me then is to show my girls who I am. I want them to see who I am. And I think it's okay if, like, they don't have to be scheduled every minute of every day, that they can come along, riding horse, that they can come and sing with me. Edie's, my oldest, who's 5, but she was up on stage with me when she was like 3 years old. And you can tell that if they want to be a part of that. I always wanted to be a part of that with my dad. And so it doesn't mean that they all have to be professional musicians. It's just that they can see that part of me where I am in love with something, and then they can at least see what passion looks like. And I noticed that that's how I learned what passion looks like from my dad and my mom, especially out here on the ranch. There's some people who are raised in these rural environments where it's stressful. This is not an easy lifestyle. It's a beautiful, wonderful lifestyle, but like, I always joke, like, it probably would have been easier if I would have married a chiropractor. We would just live in the suburbs, and I could like mow my lawn, and that was like what we did. Of course, everyone's life's more complicated than that, but I
Yeah,
got to see my dad, work really, really hard, and my mom sacrificed so much to be in the middle of nowhere and raise these girls because she thought it was the best place for them. But someone who, I guess what I'm trying to say is, sometimes when you get raised in these rural environments, you only see the work because you see the stress on your parents, and you don't want that life. I saw the work, but I saw gratitude, all the time gratitude. Dad's taking us to the top of the hill, the first thaw of spring, looking up at the sun, maybe sitting down in the first dry patch that we could sit down in, and saying, "Isn't this wonderful? Boy, feel how nice that sun feels. We are so lucky to be here." He was always grateful. And I just want that gratefulness to kind of pour out of me too, the same way it poured out of him, so that my daughters can be in love with life.
yeah.
I think that's the greatest gift we can give them.
That's so beautiful. And, I grew up with parents that always showed us gratitude and preached gratitude. And I think that's so true that, when you're working so hard at something, and I love how your mother was the dancer in the kitchen and all that. I think it's such a great thing for a kid to see, because kids watch, when they really look up to an adult, they really watch what they do, and environment is such a big thing. And oh my gosh, they look like such happy kids. So you guys are obviously doing something right.
Well, we are happy, and you're so right. They just like, it's faster than I thought. Like, they notice what you're doing. And then they're also so much, these kids, their own people, like as soon as they come out into the world and take their first breath. So they're already their own person. But I just laugh. I think I have a couple cow dogs, and one of them's kind of wild. And I remember Edie being like first talking, and I would always yell out the door, like, Gus, get back here, like in my trying to sound like my husband. And
Yeah.
that's literally like one of the first things Edie learns to do. It's like, Gus, get over here. So you're like, oh, I sound like that. Or like
That's the
they
one
walk
here.
around.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, making the same noises that I do, because I'm kind of like, I'm an expressive person. So yeah, I'm happy, but when I'm annoyed, like, I'm annoyed. So same with my daughters, like Rosie, who's just turned 3 today, she'll do like, oh, like the same noise that I do when I'm frustrated. So
You
they're
must
just
like
little
the sound of the
sponges.
noise that that's her homage to you.
Yes, yeah. Oh yeah. Like she
That's so
just, yeah,
cute.
they're just great.
And she was the one with everybody has to go and look at your Instagram and your blog and everything, the powdered donut escapade. I thought that was really cute.
She's gonna take that to her grave. She did not eat that donut. Mm-mm. She's a little liar sometimes. You gotta
That's so
admire her for
that's
that.
so sweet. Well, I always ask my guests this question: what is your power word?
Oh yeah, my power word right now, and I think I already touched on it, and maybe it's not so profound, but right now it's gratitude, because
Yeah.
I think gratitude fosters compassion,
Yeah.
and we need that in the world today. So if you can find
Yes.
a way to be grateful even in the really tough times, it can make the world a better place, I think. So
I think that's so true. I read a really cool book that a friend of mine recommended and gave to me. It's called The Magic, and it's written by the same lady that was one of the authors. Remember The Secret, that was
yes.
out some years ago. Well, anyway, the whole idea of the magic is, that there's all these opportunities you have to pay gratitude to people, even if they don't hear you say it. It's like you're sprinkling the fairy dust on them, so to speak. And I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to talk about. I always thought it was cool how the grocery clerks, back then when they would type everything in, they didn't slide it and scan it, and I thought that was just the coolest gig, and so I thought, wow, my mom would say, you always have to be grateful for people like this, and if they're not nice someday, you got to think about, well, maybe something bad happened that morning, like their car didn't start or whatever. And and so I always think about those things. It's like my mother could have written that book,
Mhm.
and so I think that's so true about gratitude, because it really fosters compassion. It really does. And it
Oh,
makes you
I
feel
love
so
that
good.
your mom gave you that gift of just being in the moment and sharing that as she was seeing it and thinking it. Because,
Yeah.
you pass that along to enough people, it makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so true. So I'm going to ask you to finish this question since we're talking about gratitude. The number one thing I'm most grateful for today is,
Oh, my health, 100%. And the health of my family. You
yeah,
can't, I learned so much about being vulnerable. I mean, I feel like I was always pretty vulnerable and pretty open in the work that I do. And I think that's a gift as well that we can give each other, is really being honest about the struggles that we go through, because it's the human condition, right? And if you can share your human condition or your experience with the next person, we don't feel so alone. We feel like we're normal. We feel like we are
yeah,
in it together. But I really was humbled this year by getting just told every plan, everything just thumbed down, because I needed to get better and I had no control over it. And
yeah,
so I really have a lot. We were talking about compassion, but compassion for those who have chronic illnesses, or I have this big scar down my chest, and someone mentioned to me, like, I just, she had the same scar, and his wife makes him cover it up. And he's like, but I love how you show it off or whatever, like, don't hide it. And I think, well, I wear this with pride because there's so many moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas that would have worn this scar proudly if they would have got to, carry on and be with their kids a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I am, I'm forever changed by this experience, and we'll have this, and this cancer diagnosis is something I'll be watching, forever. But can every hard thing that my husband and I go through, whether it's layoffs or, family issues or health issues, we look at each other and say, well, now we know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And now we know what this feels like, so that we can pass on the compassion that we received and the help that we received to get through it. And that, I think, is what my number one thing is.
That's beautiful. This has been one of my favorite interviews
that
I've done. I love talking to you, and we're both busy people, but we should talk more often, because it's just been a great conversation. And I want to thank you so much for making the time on your daughter's 3rd birthday, when you're supposed to be down there making powdered donuts. What's wrong?
Yeah, right.
Down there,
well, I decorated last night.
You got it all ready.
Yeah, we're all okay. But Kirsti, I really appreciate you taking time to visit with me out here in the middle of nowhere, and helping tell the story about this unconventional, singer-songwriter just doing our thing. And like I just say over and over again, people always ask me why I didn't move to the coast or New York or maybe Nashville, which of course I love Nashville.
Yeah.
But I always think, like, all of these places need musicians. They need artists. We need to, wherever you are listening from today, I guess, especially in this holiday season, buy from your local artist, buy music, go, we can't go to shows right now, but these places, these little nooks and crannies of the Midwest, I got to travel up and down. I got to see, and there's some of the most beautiful creative souls tucked away in these places.
Yes.
And we need to, like, champion that. So that's my other part of my life that I work on doing. But
I'm so glad that you said that. I've been fortunate to be able to travel to a lot of little small towns and drive through towns, whatever you want to call them, and I always think, there's just artsiness everywhere. There's just artsiness everywhere you go, if you really take the time to look for it. And one of my favorite songs, I don't know if you know this song, Jeffrey Steele wrote it and Montgomery Gentry recorded it. It's called My Town.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jeffrey Steele wrote that song about when he went to play some songwriter show in some rinky-dink little town in Colorado or somewhere. And he was talking about the town, and somebody heard him and they said, well, this is my town. This is where I want to live. And it's such a great idea for a song, and how it embodies what it is, just what you're saying, that there are places where people live and work and live and die and, support and everything. And they don't have to leave there to be who they are.
That's so true. And thank you for saying that. You don't have, and you don't have to leave here to be who you are. We sort of were raised, and there's a lot of kids right now facing down, their senior year, what they're going to do next. And in rural America, being told, like, in order to be somebody, you need to move away from here. There's nothing for you here. Don't come back. Don't make the same mistakes. Don't whatever. But really, in our small towns, need those people. We need to say, be proud of where you came from. Go off and get your experience. If you come back here, great, we support you. But you can definitely have a good life in these places. I see it surrounding me all the time. There's good work to be done, and we need good people here. We have good people, but we need to keep them.
Yeah, exactly. That's your mantra.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online, for those people that don't know you until today?
Well, I'm the only Jessie Veeder. So Jessie Veeder.
I don't think I've seen another one.
I don't think so. Jessie Veeder Music is where you can buy my music, jessieveedermusic.com. VeederRanch.com is my blog. But if you just Google me, all my music, of course, is on all of the platforms. I'm doing a little sale right now, so I can sign in some books and CDs and send them your way for a little discount during this week. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I think we definitely need to contact Duluth Trading Company, because they're a work girl.
Yes,
Their
I
theme
love it.
song. I love that song. I could sing it right now. It's so good.
Oh, I love
I
it.
want to thank you again, Jessie, for being here. It's really been a pleasure. And everybody, don't go away. We're going to be right back. And don't forget to check out Jessie Veeder.